Contactless art, huh? Well, if you can't decide if you want to defeat whoever's attacking you with a saber or seduce them, there you go.
Don't do that.
I'm not the first one to poke fun at this. So let's acknowledge for a moment that when you see something randomly pop up on the internet without context, you might not get the whole picture, and if you're not familiar with a particular martial art, it's easy to jump to false conclusions due to ignorance. That's the positive things I can say here. But still, what the fuck? I'll take a look at other demonstrations from the same system that this is from in a moment, but first let's just try to digest this. So first off, I'm not sure exactly what's going on here. I was trying to find which video this clip is from, but even though I could find the channel that clearly has videos filmed in the same location and with the same guy, I couldn't find this in particular. Maybe it was removed or maybe it's on another channel. Either way, all I can find is this here. So I don't know what's leading up to this because the guy's very close to him, the guy with the saber, and is already, basically the point is already past him. So maybe he stepped in and tried to stab him or slash him or something, and the defender does his seductive snake maneuver then. Even then, it's kind of a strange situation. Like, you have a saber and the other guy's unarmed, and what you're going to do is just do like a downward thrust from above. That's already the more benign interpretation. It looks even worse than that. It looks as if the intent is to just slice him like that. I don't know why you would ever want to do that, or why you would ever want to get this close to an unarmed person if you're attacking with a saber, but okay. And so what's happening then? I'm pretty sure he's still getting sliced. Okay, I might have a hypothesis for the why of what's going on here. Imagine you're a hardcore Street Fighter fan, and you really like Sagat's scar, and you want one. This might do it. If you survive, you might have a Sagat scar. Okay, so if you get to this point, it's a big if, you're this close, and the point of the saber's past you and everything. If you get there without getting slashed open or stabbed or something else, you can do pretty much almost whatever you want. Not entirely, because it still depends on the other guy. It still depends on how strong the attacker is and how capable the attacker is at grappling. I mean, if the attacker is this dumb and just gets this close to you with such a long-reaching weapon, then they're clearly not very bright or competent or whatever, then you might have a chance. But yeah, if you somehow end up here, you're good for the most part. I just feel like the snake dance is not really how you get there. So in theory, I can see what the idea is here. It's somewhat like rolling with a punch in boxing. Ideally, you don't get punched. But if you do, rather than standing there rigidly and fully absorbing the brunt of the force, being rooted to the ground, you want to be flexible and be able to move with it and allow the force to kind of glance off you and travel off to the side, as opposed to directly into you. So that's the idea. The problem, of course, is in a boxing match or even in a bare-knuckle fist fight, if you mess it up and you absorb more of the force than intended, you're probably going to be okay. It's not good to be punched in the face, but, you can go on. If you mess up even a little bit here and you got a saber blade in your chest, it's a bit harder to come back from that. If you lag a little bit behind, because you have to obviously first see what's happening and then you have to respond to it, so the reaction time is in between. But if you're a little bit behind, even if the fist starts to impact your face, as if you start moving at that point, you still absorb some of it, right? Or redirect some of it, I should say. If you're a little bit behind on a sword stab, the point is starting to enter your body and then you're starting to respond. It's a little bit late. I mean, is it better to have half as much steel enter your body as opposed to the full length? Yes. Is this a good primary defense? So this is a channel I could find that has videos that were clearly filmed in the same location. So I'm assuming it's part of the same system, which is Systema, a Russian martial arts system. This is 9 years old. Things might have changed quite a bit during that time. I know I have changed a lot during the past 9 years, so might be outdated. Okay, some of the movement patterns are a little bit unconventional, but the basics here make perfect sense. So you meet and displace the opponent's blade, redirect it off to the side, and then you counter however way you like, really. What I find odd is that it looks as if the counter is a slap with the flat. Not the most effective, but okay, depends on what you want to do. It really is a slap with the flat, isn't it? At first I was wondering, is this maybe a strike with the spine? But I'm pretty sure that's just a flat. I mean, don't get me wrong. A flat strike to the face is still going to suck, and it's being followed up by a cut. This one I don't quite get. As said, once you've displaced it, okay, and be sure your leg is out of the way, which he does. At that point, you can do a lot. I just don't quite understand the backhand flat slap to the face, but maybe it's supposed to be less lethal. I'm not sure. Okay, that is definitely not something I've seen before. So you displace the opponent's single blade with your two blades. You smack him in the face with both at once. I mean, as I said, at that point, you've pretty much succeeded already. If the opponent overcommits, which this guy clearly does, yeah, at that point, he's at your mercy. Okay, maybe that's where this comes from. So this is some, I'm not sure exactly what it is. It looks like it almost looks like he's just raking him with the tip of the sword. In which case the snake dance might actually kind of work. Yeah, this is perfectly fine. There's nothing particularly weird about this. Yeah. This is all perfectly reasonable. Yeah. It's interesting. Like, I wouldn't have believed that these are both from the same system. Maybe there's something I'm missing. But this is much more practical than the writhing and wiggling to try to not be disemboweled. You're just dominating the center line and thrusting. Yeah. It's pretty much a thrust counter to a cut, which there is in plenty of systems. Okay, this is where it gets a little weird. The other guy is overacting a little bit. No. No, now we're getting weird. Now we're getting to the ragdoll stuff. Okay. I mean, you know what? Okay, I can see what he's doing here. All right. I have seen techniques like this, so it's a way to control the weak of your opponent's blade and try to, yeah, it's binding and winding essentially. That's pretty good. There's just the other guy does weird things, and I feel like that's often the problem with so many demonstrations. They look like they work because the training partner you're demonstrating with is being a ragdoll and giving you no resistance at all. In that case, you can make a lot of things look cool and look as if they work and everything. But the question is, can you pull it off in sparring against a fully resisting opponent who doesn't want you to pull off the technique? And even better, can you do it against someone from a different school with a different background who doesn't want you to do the thing? Because if at your school you teach a very specific way of doing things, drill certain movement patterns into the students, and expect them to be the attacker in very certain predictable ways, then if somebody does something else, it may not work. I mean, there's a great parody by Jim Carrey that shows that quite well. Now, obviously, sparring with blunt swords and full protective gear is not the same as a real sword fight in history or even a machete attack nowadays or what have you. But it's closer to reality than demonstrating something with a floppy, over-compliant partner. Okay, so I see the concept mechanically, but the problem is it works because the other guy's completely off balance and I was going to say doesn't resist. I mean, in this position, you can't resist anymore because your balance is already completely broken. Now, what I have to wonder about is how did we get here? Did he just hit you in the chest straight up? So now it's like, okay, you have 5 fractured ribs and internal bleeding, and now you're retaliating by making him trip. And you're giving him a gentle hug on the way down.
What?
Here, I've seen these sorts of demonstrations before, which they're sound in principle, if you assume that the opponent acts in a very particular way. What I mean is, so look at what the guy on the left is doing. He's actually switching the grip right there. That's what allows him to exceed the natural range of motion that the other guy has, who just keeps holding on rigidly. The other guy is being controlled because he refuses absolutely to let go. But he's so close that he could just let go of the stick and grapple with the other guy and then either try to take the stick, like retake the stick, or otherwise attack the guy. If the opponent has both hands or even just one hand on the weapon that can't be used very effectively so close up because they're essentially at grappling distance already, then you can focus on punching him in the face or whatever. Like, you don't have to really worry that much about the weapon. You see what I mean? Okay, that sequence I like a little bit more. So the other guy tries to wrench it out of his hand and he regains control. I do see some potential in using this against a less skilled opponent. If someone attacks you with a stick and you do manage to get a hold of it and you're good at doing these sorts of contortions and wrenching it around to bring the opponent's joints into compromised positions where they either have to let go or be taken down or have their joints broken or whatever, and the opponent is just not skilled enough to figure out what to do and they just stubbornly hold on, then okay, I can see that working. So that's my way of giving this the benefit of the doubt. In fact, that looks pretty decent. Again, the other guy seems to not resist at all, which I guess for a demonstration is fair enough. I'm skeptical. Some of this looks very odd and overly choreographed with an extremely compliant partner. But it doesn't look as strange as the snake dance. Okay, yeah, I can see that. Even if you don't take the other guy down, that would suck. With the axe blade, I mean, someone reaching out to try to grab your axe There are plenty of ways to make them pay for that. And I do think generally it's not a bad idea to practice these sorts of responses to attempted disarms. Because if one person has a weapon and the other one doesn't, there's definitely a high likelihood, with a short weapon at least, a high likelihood that some kind of grappling, wrestling over the weapon is going to happen. Not so much with a saber. So until I see this pulled off in sparring against a fully resisting opponent, I'll be skeptical. But at least it doesn't look completely off the rocker, you know? Here's another video, also Systema, but a different guy. Well, there you go, that works. I don't have any complaints about that. So it's simply displacing the opponent's cut with the spine of your own blade with some lateral movement. If you look at the positioning, he would not have been really cut to begin with. It looks like the cut would have passed by his right side. So you can ideally would combine this with lateral movement to get out of the danger zone and then parry it with the spine of your blade, not your own spine. And then just directly counter. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. Targeting the outside of the arm or the inside, depending on where they're positioned. Particularly, if the opponent aims for your leg, they have less reach, and you can aim for the arm. Because the arm is far forward, they can't reach your leg as easily. I don't know why the attack is seemingly done with the flat, so just kind of smacking with the flat. But if you had aligned it, if the attacker on the left had aligned the edge correctly, he would have already cut the other guy in the arm. Right, so that did not work. He made it look as if it worked. But generally, this is the kind of thing you see in pretty similar ways in machete fighting as well. There's a lot of sustained blade contact, a lot of targeting the hands and forearms and all that, which makes perfect sense. That's the most available target. It's the furthest forward, and that way you don't expose anything other than your own arm and hand, which of course is still not good, but you can't threaten the opponent without being threatened unless you have a much longer weapon. This is definitely useful against a slower opponent, shall we say. In a fight or sparring, it's a lot more difficult to pull that off if the opponent is good at misdirecting. So like they feint here and then cut there, or they do little misdirecting twitches and adjust course and all that. Everything becomes a lot more difficult, but that's always the case. Techniques like this are in the historical manuals as well, where, against a downward cut, you would just step in and cut the offending arm off, essentially, as it comes down, or control the arm and slice. And there are plenty of things you can do like that, which, as I said, are difficult to pull off against a resisting opponent, depending on the skill gap. If you're much more skilled than the opponent is, of course, you have more of a chance to pull it off. But that's fights. They require skill, and there's a lot of variables, and sometimes shit goes wrong. So there's nothing wrong with the techniques here that he's demonstrating. Yeah, there's a perfectly valid defense against the thrust. Here as well, overbind on the outside. So this way, the opponent can't threaten you at all because the point is going past you, but your blade is on their inside. So the guy on the right can thrust or cut or whatever right now without having to worry about it. So, yeah. Good stuff. And this is why I said what I did earlier on in the video about jumping to false conclusions if you just see something out of context and you're not familiar with it and all that. And in this case, if you just see that wiggle dance clip and you think, oh, this is Systema sword defense. What a bunch of bullshit. I don't know what the general conclusion is here overall, because the other problem is any generalized statements you make about an entire art, that may very well depend on how good the teacher is. They may be better and worse instructors. By the way, don't take this too far. Don't assume I'm saying that you cannot criticize any system you haven't practiced extensively yourself. Of course not. There's plenty of mech dojo stuff where you look at it and you're immediately like, bullshit. And some martial arts systems or schools may have somewhat cult-like methods, whether intentionally or not. It's just if you practice with a group the same things, everybody's on the same page, right? So you know how the technique is supposed to work, how the partner is supposed to react to it, etc., etc. And then you build this up, this house of cards, basically, that you haven't tested against somebody from the outside. So then it may seem to you personally that this is perfectly sound. It works when we do it. But it may fall apart when somebody else does it who isn't on the same page and does things differently, which is what tends to happen on the street. Not that sword fights are common on the street, usually. Anyway, I hope you get the gist of what I'm trying to bring across here. It always pays to be skeptical, but don't take it to the point where you just dismiss everything immediately. Do reserve some benefit of the doubt. I hope you found this interesting or entertaining or something else. Thanks for watching and stay safe, folks.